Picture this, you standing in a room. It's a nice enough room. You worked incredibly hard to get the keys to this room. You did all the stuff they told you to do. You went to school, you got the job, you set up the direct deposit, you put your 5% into the 401k, and you bought a sensible Honda instead of a luxury SUV. You are, by all traditional metrics, a highly responsible adult. Welcome to Wealth Explainers. I'm really glad you're here, even if that room you're standing in feels a little cramped lately. Today, we're looking straight at that feeling. We're talking about the trap of the middle-class squeeze, the two undeniable reasons it hurts so much, and how to find the door before the walls completely close in. Because here's what is happening in that room. You're standing there, being responsible, but lately, you've noticed something weird. The ceiling of this room seems a little lower than it was last year. You brush it off. You figure it's just a trick of the light, or maybe you're just tired. Then, a few months later, you realize something even worse. The floor is higher too. You aren't growing. The room is shrinking. The middle-class squeeze isn't a theory. It's not a buzzword invented by economists to sell books. It is an everyday physical sensation. It's that moment you look at your bank account on the 28th of the month, do a quick mental calculation of what you made versus what you spent, and think, where did it actually go? I didn't even do anything fun. Let's talk about the emotional reality of this, because nobody ever puts that in a spreadsheet. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from playing strictly by the rules and still feeling like you're losing the game. We were all sold a very specific formula growing up. It was a societal handshake. The deal was simple. You give the marketplace 40 hours a week, maybe a few more on busy weeks, you don't do anything financially reckless, and in exchange, you get the house with the yard, a couple of road trips a year, braces for the kids, and a retirement where you can play golf or take up competitive birdwatching. That was the deal. But today, that deal feels like it's being renegotiated in real time by a lawyer who actively dislikes you. You get the annual raise, but your property taxes suddenly jump. You finally pay off the car, but your family's health insurance premiums miraculously spike by the exact same amount. You try to take the family to a theme park for a long weekend and realize the tickets and hotels cost the same as a used sedan did in 2005. You're doing everything right, and somehow the math still looks offended by your presence. To understand why this feels so suffocating, we have to look at the mechanics of the room. We have to look at the two distinct forces creating the pressure. The first force, the ceiling coming down, is the relentless, unapologetic surge in the cost of basic existence. Notice I said basic existence. When financial pundits talk about inflation, they love to talk about consumer electronics and airfare. They will look right at the camera and say, well, flat-screen TVs are cheaper than ever. That's fantastic. I love a cheap TV, but I cannot live inside a Samsung. The things that have skyrocketed over the last 20 years aren't the optional luxuries. They are the absolute prerequisites for a standard, dignified middle-class life. Housing, healthcare, education, childcare. Let's just look at housing for a second. The classic starter home used to be a stepping stone. It was a modest place to build a little equity. Now, buying a 1,500 square foot house with a semi-functional HVAC system requires the kind of capital that used to buy a minor aristocratic title. The ceiling is dropping fast. The cost of keeping a roof over your head, the cost of not going bankrupt when you get sick, the cost of having someone watch your toddler so you can go to work to pay for the person watching your toddler. These aren't lifestyle choices. These are the mandatory tolls on the highway of modern life. And those tolls are going up at a pace that defies logic. When the media talks about people struggling, they love to blame the avocado toast or the daily latte. It's a convenient narrative because it implies the problem is your lack of personal discipline. It's easy to say, just make coffee at home. But let's be brutally honest with ourselves. You cannot brew enough Folgers in your kitchen to offset a 40% increase in your rent. You cannot skip enough Sunday brunches to cover a $15,000 medical deductible. The ceiling isn't coming down because you bought a nice sandwich. The ceiling is coming down because the structural costs of the American dream have completely decoupled from economic reality. It's like gravity got turned up by 20% overnight, and everyone is just walking around the grocery store pretending their legs don't hurt. Now, if the ceiling was the only thing moving, it would be tough, but maybe manageable. You could just climb higher, work a little harder, and push back. But here comes the second force. The floor is coming up to meet you. The floor is your income. More specifically, it is the purchasing power of your income. For decades, wage growth for the middle class has essentially flatlined when adjusted for the real cost of living. Let's translate that from economic jargon into plain English. It means you are running on a treadmill. Someone in the control room keeps bumping up the speed and the incline, and the digital display keeps telling you that you've run 0 miles. Think about the annual review at a standard corporate job. You crush your goals, you stay late. You cover for Chad when Chad goes to find himself in Tulum for 3 weeks. Your boss sits you down, gives you a glowing review, shakes your hand, and proudly announces a 3% merit increase. You're supposed to smile, say thank you, and feel valued. But your rent went up 8%. Your groceries went up 12%. Your auto insurance went up 15% because someone in another zip code crashed a car. That 3% raise isn't a raise. It's a pay cut disguised as a promotion. You are literally making less money in terms of what that money can actually buy in the real world than you were 365 days ago. This is why the squeeze hurts so deeply. It's not just a mathematical problem, it's a deeply psychological one. Human beings are wired for progress. We can endure a massive amount of stress and hard work if we feel like we're moving forward. But when the floor rises underneath you while the ceiling presses down on top of you, you experience the absolute maddening frustration of maximum effort for 0 momentum. It feels like getting squeezed by 2 people who both insist they're not touching you. The broader economy tells you employment is high and the stock market is hitting record highs. The charts on the evening news are all green. The experts say everything is fine. But your personal economy, the actual math happening at your kitchen table on a Tuesday night, is flashing bright red. So what do we naturally do? What is the standard, deeply ingrained, culturally approved response to this pressure? We try to save our way out of it. We shrink. We cut back. We cancel the streaming subscriptions. We switch to the generic brand of paper towels that disintegrate if you look at them too aggressively. We try to stack up our savings just to buy ourselves a little bit of breathing room. And look, saving is important. Having a cash buffer is crucial. I will never sit here and tell you that having an emergency fund is a bad idea. But in the middle of a structural macroeconomic squeeze, saving alone starts to feel like holding up a collapsing ceiling with your bare hands. Think about the physics of that shrinking room again. The ceiling is inflation and housing. The floor is wage stagnation. If you just stand there and put your hands up, which is essentially what saving cash in a standard checking account is, your arms are eventually going to give out. Cash is static. The squeeze is dynamic. When inflation is running hot, your savings account isn't a safe vault. It's a melting block of ice. Every single day you leave it there, it loses a tiny fraction of its purchasing power. Saving helps you survive the week, the month, maybe the year, but at some point, it starts to feel like using a coffee mug to bail out a flooding living room. You're working incredibly hard. You're doing the responsible thing, but the water just keeps rising. You cannot outsave a structural squeeze. You cannot budget your way to wealth if the currency you are budgeting is constantly losing value against the assets you actually need to buy. And this is the trap. The trap is believing that if you just clench your jaw a little tighter, if you just become a little more intensely frugal, you will eventually pop out the other side into financial freedom. But frugality isn't an exit strategy. Frugality is a survival mechanism. If you want to get out of the room, you have to stop holding up the ceiling and start building a door. The real turning point in your financial life comes when you shift your focus from simply surviving the squeeze to actively finding a way out of it. And that exit has a name. It's called assets. Let me explain the fundamental difference between how the middle class operates and how the wealthy operate, because it completely changes how you view this pressure cooker. The middle class tries to build a life on income. They trade their time for a paycheck, and they use that paycheck to buy liabilities, things that lose value, and to pay for their lifestyle. When the squeeze happens, their only defense is to try to work more hours or spend fewer dollars. The wealthy do not build their lives on income. They build their lives on assets. An asset is simply something that puts money in your pocket whether you are awake, asleep, on vacation, or sitting in gridlock traffic. When the ceiling of inflation comes down, what exactly is it made of? It's made of rising prices. But who benefits from rising prices? The people who own the things that are getting more expensive. If housing prices go up 20%, it's an absolute disaster if you're trying to rent or buy your first home. But it is a massive wealth generator if you already own real estate. If the cost of goods and services skyrockets, it hurts the everyday consumer, but it drives up the stock prices and dividends of the companies selling those goods and services. Assets are the only things that grow with the ceiling. When you buy an asset, whether that's a broad market index fund, a piece of real estate, a stake in a small business, or even investing in a high-income skill that drastically changes your earning floor, you are buying a piece of the structure itself. You stop being the person squished in the middle, and you start becoming the person who owns the building. This is the great shift. It's moving from playing defense to playing offense. Instead of constantly asking, how can I cut $50 out of my grocery budget this month? You start asking, how can I acquire an asset this month that will pay me $5 a month for the rest of my life? It sounds small at first. $5 is nothing, right? But it's not about the $5. It's about the mechanics of what you are doing. You are building a machine that operates completely independently of your time and your physical labor. You are finally buying back your own oxygen. So, how do we use this? What is the practical reframe for you tomorrow morning when you wake up and look at your bank account? First, stop blaming yourself for a math problem you didn't invent. If you've been feeling stressed, if you've been feeling like you're doing it all wrong because there's never enough left over at the end of the month, take a deep breath. You are living through a historically unique economic pressure cooker. The squeeze is real. It's not in your head, and it's not because you lack discipline or bought a latte on a Tuesday. Give yourself some grace. You are fighting macroeconomic gravity. Second, change your target. The goal of your financial life is no longer just to save money. The goal is to convert your depreciating cash into appreciating assets as quickly and efficiently as possible. Every time you get paid, before the squeeze can get its hands on your money, you buy an asset. You buy a piece of the escape hatch. Even if it's $50 a month into an S&P 500 ETF, even if it's $100, it does not matter how small the door starts. What matters is that you are building it, because over time, those assets compound. They start generating their own gravity. They start pushing back against the ceiling for you. You don't need to hold up the collapsing structure with your bare hands forever. You just need to hold it up long enough to build something that can take the weight. The middle-class squeeze is inherently designed to keep you busy. It's designed to keep you exhausted, hyper-focused on the micro-stressors of next week's bills, so you never actually look up and study the architecture of the room. But now you know how the room works. You know the ceiling is dropping with inflation and housing costs, and you know the floor is rising with wage stagnation. You can't control the global macroeconomic forces of inflation. You can't single-handedly fix corporate wage stagnation. But you can control where you put your capital. You can refuse to play a game where the rules guarantee you lose slowly over time. Stop trying to just survive the pressure. Start buying the assets that lift the ceiling. If you found this breakdown helpful and want to continue learning how the financial system really works, please hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and leave a comment below with a financial topic you want us to cover next. Thanks for listening to Wealth Explainers, and we'll see you in the next episode.